And we're live. Welcome back, everyone, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Atoll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we have a bunch of new stories to talk about this week on our podcast. And we are also excited to share that this episode is sponsored by Retrospec, makers of sleek, powerful e bikes and outdoor gear built for everyday adventure. We're going to tell you more about Retrospec later in the episode. But first, we've got some interesting news from the last week or two to cover. We've got a bunch of different stories ranging from new electric bikes launched. Tenways got a really big front-loading cargo bike headed to the US. Lime's launching some new e-bikes and an electric moped that actually looks pretty cool. We've got an interesting real-world range test on an e-bike to see if it can really do 100 miles. California's got some new e-bike vouchers coming up, so that's probably going to interest a lot of our readers and listeners. We went to China. Actually, both Seth and I very recently have been to China. One of the stories we'll be talking about. Yeah, Seth is coming from halfway around the world right now. So we're going to talk about one of the recent trips we took to see Yadea's giant dealer summit there. We're going to talk about a new law in California trying to create a legal class for Sur Rons. And then we're going to finish it off with a new electric unicycle from InMotion. But where are we going to start this time, Seth?
All right. Tenways launches its carry the whole family cargo e-bike in the US.
This is a really cool cargo e-bike, in my opinion. I hope you agree, because I just think this thing is awesome. It's a front-loading cargo bike, which is a lot rarer in the US. We see these more in Europe. They're called bakfiets, if I'm saying that correctly, in Dutch, which is like sort of the name that's been co-opted in many places in the world. And basically, instead of what we typically think of as like a long-tail cargo bike with that long rack in the back, this one is instead stretched in the front, and you get this sort of bathtub looking thing between the rider and the front wheel. So that front wheel is way far out there. And on Tenways here, they say it's got 800 liters of storage in that front cargo box. So that's easily enough for two kids, one in the front and one in the back of the box. Though a lot of these will have like two kids in the rear and one in the front. So you can get three kids up there. You could carry a bunch of weight, all sorts of, various loose items in there, things you couldn't carry as easily on a long tail cargo bike because, you don't have anywhere to like dump them in a big trunk. So this is literally like a big tub. It also has the advantage of getting that center of gravity really low, right? Because that's a downside on a long tail cargo bike, is that your cargo is up above the wheels, usually above like a 20 or a 24-inch wheel on the rear rack. So this way you keep that weight nice and low. The downside of this style of e-bike is they're usually really expensive. A couple of the big names that we know in this category, Urban Arrow, Reese and Muller, these usually start at like the basic model around 6,000 and then quickly go up from there. It's not, a surprise at all to see an $8,000 front loading like bakfiets style cargo bike. Tenways here with the Cargo One they just launched in the US, $5,500. So still, not chump change, right? But fairly affordable compared to a $7,000 or $8,000 Urban Arrow or Reese and Muller. In terms of specs, it's got a mid-drive motor. To me, it looks like a Bafang. I don't think they've confirmed that, but when I would zoom in, it really looks like one of the Bafang motor lines. So I'm pretty sure that's a Bafang mid-drive. It's got I believe a Gates belt drive on it, Tektro hydraulic disc brakes. It does have a suspension fork up front, though that front wheel is so far away from you that suspension is probably more for the kids than for the rider in this case. But it looks like a pretty slick bike. Tenways, we've known them from some more like budget level type bikes. Have you gotten a chance to ride some Tenways yet? Seth?
Yeah, the G60 or G600, I think.
Yeah, the G600,
The
right?
one you had, but without the belt.
Yeah. So, we've known them from more of like this budget oriented commuter type of e-bike. And so it's cool to see them expand into this category that's normally a category dominated by much more premium e-bike companies. And so, we haven't put hands on this yet. Hopefully we'll get a chance to. It's a little trickier. I've been talking to Tenways about a way I can test one of these. They don't send them out the way they send out their normal bikes. That, if you buy a Tenways bike, it shows up in a box at your front door and you assemble it. Because these front loaders are significantly more complicated to put together, they use a dealership model where they send it to one of their few participating dealers, and they assemble it so that you get a properly built cargo bike, which is probably a good idea with how complicated these are. But they've only got a few dealers, so we'll hopefully find a way to get a test on one of these and let you know whether the quality is good. But from looking at the pictures and the spec sheet, it does look like a pretty interesting, well thought out Bach feet style cargo bike. Time will tell if that's the real case. But Seth, I know we've ridden a few of these together at different bike events, Eurobike, that sort of thing. Usually I'm the kid and Seth is the dad on back. What's it like riding these types of e-bikes?
They're actually like surprisingly stable. Like I'm always surprised how easy they are to kind of maneuver, and like, that has that weird like gear thing that moves the front wheel from left to right, but it just seems to work. Like it works pretty well. Obviously, I haven't tried this particular version yet, and it'll be interesting to see like how powerful and how well, because I think we're used to mid drives, but this one looks like it's a hub, isn't it, or is it mid drive as well?
No, I think it's the Bafang mid drive. I think in the back
Okay.
that's some sort of hub, like an internally geared hub.
Oh, gotcha.
I
Yeah,
think
that
so. Yeah.
one picture. This doesn't quite look. Top picture doesn't quite look like there's a mid drive there, but you're right. Like this other picture kind of confirms that there's a mid drive. It makes
Yes, I
sense.
think. Yeah, I think they had a different version in Europe at first. Maybe it was like the first model when they launched this. That you're right. I think it had a hub motor in back, so it could be that they sent out a few different press pictures here.
Okay.
Because yeah, the other
Well,
one does look like it's missing a mid drive.
yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, these are great. Like, it's a great style of bike, and it works really well. You kind of have a low center of gravity with the kids rather than having them up higher in a, behind the rear seat kind of thing. And obviously, you can also carry tons of cargo in something like this. You could deliver food or do all kinds of other stuff. But yeah, I just love the form factor, and at a much lower price point. You got to love that as well.
Yeah, like I can't imagine these are going to sell like hotcakes in the US, but it does make it more approachable, right? There are probably a lot of families that 5,500 is, up for discussion, whereas 8,000, is a non-starter. So, maybe they sell these in the hopefully high two figures. I doubt they're going to sell hundreds of these kind of thing, but maybe, we'll have to see.
Yeah, and it's always worth noting that a lot of the price of these things is in the shipping, because they can't ship them in a bike box. They got to be like on a big crate. So you're
Yeah.
talking close to 1,000 or maybe even more. I don't even know, to get this thing to your door. So that's where a lot of the price is.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
All right, let's move on. Lime officially launches new e-bike and electric moped into broader sharing fleets.
Yeah, so these are the new Lime bike and Lime glider vehicles. Now they did debut these late last year when they announced that they were going to do some pilot programs. Um, but now they're announcing that it seems like things have gone well with the pilots, and both of these vehicles are going to be distributed into Lime's larger fleet. Doesn't mean every city is going to get them right away, but they are spreading them out across the U.S. and in several European cities. Now the Lime bike improves upon I think the previous was the Gen 4 e-bike, and they've called it Lime Bike, which is kind of an homage to the company's original name back before they even did scooters. I remember back in like 2018 or something, I lived in Boston for a year, and they had like the old school pedal Lime bikes there before scooters were part of things. So it's cool to see them sort of pay homage back to that. And then the Lime Glider is what a lot of people would call a moped type vehicle, or at least the more modern version of the moped class. It doesn't have pedals. It's other people call it a no-ped because it just has sort of like foot platforms there. But basically, it's a e-bike like vehicle, same tires, same handlebars, brakes, whatever, but there's no pedal assist, there's just a throttle. For a lot of people, especially in the North American market, needing to pedal is a big hurdle to using one of these shared bikes. There are a lot of people that buy an e-bike and they only use it on throttle. It's a little bit of a shame in my opinion. I like to go back and forth, at least enjoy the pedal assist a little bit, but I understand there are a lot of people that they're using this to get around. They don't rent a Lime bike because they want to go on a fitness ride. They rent a Lime bike because they need to like get to work or meet some friends at the coffee shop. And so the moped or the no-ped, whatever you want to call it, the Lime glider there, it solves that need while giving people the form factor of an e-bike. It goes 20 miles an hour. It fits in a bike lane just fine because it's basically an e-bike without pedals. Now, interestingly, the Lime bike in the US is also going to have a throttle. It's not going to be pedal assist only, which usually most shared e-bikes are pedal assist only. So for North Americans, that's going to be a big selling feature. And I think Lime probably made the right decision there by giving North Americans that throttle because it is so popular. In the European markets and elsewhere outside of North America, the new Lime bike will not have a throttle because generally it's not legal in most markets outside of North America. So you guys are going to be stuck with pedal assist, though pedal assist is of course much more popular in Europe and other places outside of North America. But both of these look like very interesting upgrades. They even share the same battery, which is nice because Lime is standardizing around this battery. So it means that they only need one model and they can go on their scooter, their Lime bike, their Lime glider. Really reduces the complexity of having to swap out these removable batteries. So that's great to see too. And then one last sort of interesting thing is that the Lime glider sort of takes on a new color scheme. It still has the lime green, but they've swapped out the white for the black. Normally limes are all like white and green. That's their like go-to coloring. So it's interesting they went a little bit different on the Lime glider there. I think probably to differentiate it on the street so that people know like that's the one that doesn't have the pedals and that's the one I want, kind of thing, if I was guessing. But both of them look interesting to me. Do you have a preference, Seth, for which one you'd hop on if they're both parked on the corner?
I like to pedal, but I would take either one. They both look great. I like the 20-inch wheel form factor. I think a lot of people are kind of opting for that. Just generally speaking, in bikes, the lower center of gravity makes it, more approachable, easier to get on and off. Just feels a little safer. So I think that was a smart choice there. With the battery assist, you're going to get the same speed that you get from a bigger wheeled bike. So I like the choices they made here. The handlebars are up pretty high there, but you're not really worried about too much wind typically. So yeah, I think they made all the right choices here. It's clear that they keep maturing their hardware, their platform.
Yeah, and I think in addition to the smaller wheels with that step-through design, it just makes it even more accessible. And if anything, I think that one thing that e-bikes have been good about is sort of standardizing or perhaps modernizing the step-through bike as like a style for everyone. Like a few decades ago, a step-through was considered like a girl's bike, but now
Right.
there are just so many bikes that come out only in step-through that it's more like just a more comfortable way to bike. And I prefer them. Like why who wants a bar right there that if you like hop down off the saddle, you gotta be real careful.
Oh, I remember being a kid and accidentally falling off the seat a few times and having a rough
Yeah,
day after that.
singing in the boys choir after that.
Right. So it's actually kind of strange to me that boys' bikes have the high bar. It seems like that doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
so these are just following that trend of like, so many e-bikes now are coming out step through only, makes it more accessible, easier, like whether or not you have a disability, like, maybe your hips are fine, it's just easier to hop on without having to throw a leg over. So this is just continuing that trend, I think.
yeah. The only other thing is the back. I wonder if you could kind of sneak a person on the back there. I know a lot of shared scooters users throw an extra person on there. I wonder how strong that rear um, wheel cover is.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's a structural fender, but I bet there are going to be some teenagers finding out.
Yeah, we'll find out soon enough, I'm sure. We'll keep an eye on that one. All right,
Yeah, I
let's
wonder
move
if they
on.
have to be
Oh yeah,
careful about
okay.
the design because they have to make it strong enough that if someone sits on it, it's not immediately going to like crack under them, but they don't want to make it so strong that they encourage that.
Right. Good question. All right, moving on. Can an electric bike really do 100 miles on a single charge?
This was an interesting story I stumbled upon. Priority Bikes or Priority Bicycles rather is a electric bike maker based in Manhattan, and one of their models, the Current Plus, is a really nice option as sort of this in between a bike shop and a direct to consumer bike. It does ship direct to consumers, but this is like a bike shop type company, and so it's got all these really nice components on it, and the price falls somewhere there in between at like $3,000. Anyway, they put out this interesting test. They actually saw it in an Instagram reel where they tried to take this thing and do a century ride on it, which is 100 miles on a single charge. And this bike has a 720 watt hour battery, so pretty big. It's designed to be a commuter bike, so it's fairly efficient. It's sort of splits the difference between like moderately upright, but still like an efficient riding stance. So the goal was to say, let's take this e-bike and see if we just leave it in a low power pedal assist, how far can we go? And impressively, they started in upstate New York. They rode to Manhattan, and they were able to go 90, I think it was 92 miles or so before they had to switch to the reserve battery. So they do make a auxiliary battery. It's like a rear rack that bolts onto the bike, and then you get another 500 or so watt hours. They had that on it, and once they got to Manhattan at about 92 miles, they had to switch to that one. So they did the last 8 miles that way. But it was an interesting test because so often we see these range ratings from companies that they're super like just unrealistic, super optimistic numbers. And this bike actually, it's not even rated for 100 miles. They rated it up to 75 miles of range, and we generally consider that the level one pedal assist, lowest power mode, on a windless day wearing like tight spandex. And so to see this bike do decently, like almost a third more than its rated range in its lowest power pedal assist was pretty interesting to see. Now it does have a torque sensor, and so it's not one of these bikes that will just sort of like take off when you spin the pedals. You've got to put in your own power. And I actually own this bike. This is like my go-to commuter bike, and I know that if you leave it in low power pedal assist, you're putting in a significant amount of work yourself. Like it's keeping you honest, and for that reason, I generally don't go below 2 out of 5. And so, they were not using a ton of power here, but it's still an interesting case to show on an efficient bike with a rider that's willing to put in a few hours of saddle time in a row. You can literally go 90 something miles on a single charge with a stock battery. You don't need some, crazy setup kind of thing. And considering most people are never going to need to go that far on a single charge, I think that should be confidence inspiring for anyone that's like, well, I don't know, range anxiety issues, that sort of thing. You can pretty much bet that your normal commute is going to be doable on a single charge. I know for me, doing mixed pedal assist and light throttle on this exact bike, I get closer to 40, maybe 50 miles of range if I'm leaning more on like pedal assist level 2, 3 kind of thing. I think that, Seth, your fitness is enough that you would be one of the people that could probably get 90 miles, but for me, 40 or 45 miles on this is pretty good.
I could probably get something like that, but I wouldn't. Like
The
I always
throttle
like
would
to go.
call to you after the first 50 miles.
Yeah, as soon as I just want to go as fast as possible. I don't know what else there is really, unless there's somebody else riding with me. I just like to go as fast as it'll go. So I always seem to put the throttle on the highest thing as possible and just kind of like sit at the, whether it's 20 or 28 miles per hour, try to sit right around there. So, uh, yeah, theoretically, I could probably hold back, but in reality, I probably wouldn't. So,
Well, it's
not
good
a
to
good
know
comfort.
yourself.
Right. Well, it's a
Yeah.
good exercise though.
Yeah. And good to know that like this is the capability of real world bikes in real world conditions.
By the way, for those viewing at home, the reason that I can't see any YouTube videos or Instagram posts or anything like that is I'm in China on a Chinese network, and they don't like any Western social or video uh, things, so we're not able to see those.
It's gonna be a bummer for the China post coming up, but I have a bunch of pictures in there, so that'll be all right.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of ironic that we can't see the China one because we're in China. All right, let's move to actually. Let me do the quick read of the sponsor here, real quick. Today's episode is brought to you by Retrospec, makers of sleek, powerful e-bikes and outdoor gear built for everyday adventure. What started as a few bikes in a tiny LA apartment has grown into a full lineup of accessible, high quality gear, including e-bikes, bikes, paddleboards, kids' bikes, and more, made to get more people outside, no matter where you live, how you ride, or what kind of trail you're chasing. Their electric bike line is where performance meets style, from the rugged Valen Rev Plus fat tire e-bike, built for comfort and control on any terrain, to compact commuters, trikes, and folding models that move with you wherever life takes you. Retrospec is all about affordability without compromise, so you're getting sleek design, thoughtful features, and solid performance at prices that won't break your budget. Electrek listeners can get an additional 10% off their next ride until May 8th with the exclusive code Electrek10 only at retrospec.com. That's retrospec.com. Don't forget to tag your ride, hit the road, snap a shot, and share your outdoor moment with hashtag ready to outdoor for a chance to get featured. Thank you, Retrospec, for sponsoring and for helping us all ride a little smarter. All right. Moving on. California set to give out more e-bike vouchers for up to $2,000 off an electric e-bike or e-bike.
Yeah, this is I guess the second installment of California's e-bike incentive program. It got off to a pretty rocky start. It was actually several years in the works, but it did get rolling, and this is the second time they've opened it up. The maximum voucher they're giving out is $2,000, but it's a bit of a sliding scale depending on how much each family earns, and there is an income limit. So I think you have to make below 3 times the federal poverty line, and it's dictated by how many members are in the household. And in California, 3 times the federal poverty line is still not a whole lot of money to live on. So this is ideally going to help a lot of people that wouldn't be able to afford an e-bike. Now, when I say a lot of people, that's also relative because California's what, like 40 million people, something like that. And there's yeah, and this is like it was either 1,000 or 1,500 vouchers in this round, which is great. Like, not to sound like not appreciative of programs like this, but it's kind of a drop in the bucket to all of the people who really need a alternative form of transportation but aren't able to afford dropping 1,000, 1,500, $2,000 on an e-bike. Now part of me wonders, why does the voucher need to be as high as 2,000? I mean, I could go back and forth with myself on this. Like, we don't just want to encourage people to buy like a $700 Amazon bike, right? Like, if someone's getting an alternative to a car, like, you want to spend enough that you're getting a quality product. And we often say that below 1,000, it's hard to find something that's really gonna last. And by the time you get to like 1,500 or so, that's when you're really getting into some of the better stuff. Now, there are the bike snobs that'll say if it's not $4,000, then it's not a bike. But I think for normal folks like Seth and I think 1,500 would be like, yeah, you're getting a pretty decent ride there. So for 2,000, you can get a very nice electric bike, and I wonder if it actually needs to be that high, because most other incentive programs around the U.S. don't go that high. They're 700, 1,000, $1,500. But it is great to see that this is opening up again for anyone who does live in California and meets the requirements. It will be this coming week, April 29th, that the round opens. Now, here's another thing that I'm not super excited about. They have an updated sort of window for entrance this time. Before it was just, it opened at a certain time and the first 1,000 people or whatever that clicked the button got it. Now they've got an hour window between 5 and 6 p.m. on the 29th that everyone can go into the lobby. And as long as you're in there between 5 to 6 p.m., you'll be put in the lottery for a chance to get the voucher. Now, this is an improvement, but I still think it's kind of problematic because, what if you've got work between 5 to 6 p.m., right? Like that's when your shift is, or, you're doing something with who knows what. Basically, I think that like they should have a 24-hour period here, or at least an 8-hour period or something that makes it easier for people to apply for this and not have it as limiting as this. The lottery system, that's great. That's a big improvement. The not just the, it opens at a certain time and whoever's there is there. That's an improvement. But I think that California's got a little ways to go. And we've seen several really effective e-bike incentive programs around the country already. So I think that, with a couple of years of getting this program running, California could look at some good examples and borrow a few ideas here. But like I said, I'm appreciative that these things are happening and that people in California will get the opportunity to get more incentives to buy an e-bike and hopefully get, transportation independence or move away from their, old car that's unreliable, that sort of thing. Seth, it's been a while since you lived in California, but I bet you can see all the people that this could help.
Yeah, I mean, e-bikes are huge in California, and this could probably even help that go further along. I am kind of surprised that it's working at the state level and not more local. Like you would think, like Huntington Beach or Santa Monica would have their own programs to kind of alleviate some of the traffic. I guess though that you could buy an e-bike and give it to your cousin in another town, so that might be problematic. But it's just interesting that California, it's happening at the state level and not something more local.
Yeah, I've seen a few more local ones in California. Here or there, cities that have the money and the political willpower to do it. But
Yeah.
I think they're the exception and not the rule at this point.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see how this keeps continuing.
Oh, I think we lost Seth there for a minute. He is in China right now, so he's having some slight internet
Yeah, I hit the wrong button there.
issues.
Sorry, guys.
There he is. All right, we're back.
All right. Let's see. I went inside China to the world's largest EV maker summit. Here's what I saw.
All right. I think we got to throw that up on the screen. There it is. Yeah, so this was a really cool trip that I recently took to the dealer summit for Yadea. Now, if you're not familiar with Yadea, they are a Chinese-based electric vehicle maker that they do mostly 2- and 3-wheeled EVs. They're actually the biggest electric vehicle company in the world, which might sound kind of strange because when you think of big EV companies, you think like Tesla or BYD, but Yadea sells more vehicles than the two of those, and basically like probably the top 5 or 6 EV makers combined every year. They just sold their 100 millionth vehicle earlier this year, so huge milestone. So it was really cool to go to this dealer summit where they had representatives from like 4,000 dealers all over the world and be able to see not even all of their diverse models, because of the hundreds of vehicles there, they couldn't represent even more of what they offer, but there were still so many, literally hundreds of different unique vehicles there that I had the chance to check out, from really high-tech electric scooters and mopeds to smaller, lower power. In China, you get a lot of these sort of like cutesy scooters, which is interesting in and of itself, because the reason these are so popular, these sort of like cutesy, cartoony looking types of scooters, is that commuting on 2 wheels is very I mean, it's so popular in China that it's not like a male or female thing. The where, in the West, or at least in North America, it's mostly males that are commuting by bike. Yes, there are female riders, but it's not a 50-50 breakdown. In China, basically everyone commutes on two wheels in cities. It's just there's no gender breakdown, and so you get a lot of these female-oriented scooters because there's just as big a market as there are for male riders, unlike in the US, where two wheelers are very much promoted more to males, especially the motorcycles and more powerful vehicles. So it's really cool to see in a society where everyone rides, how does that affect the market? And you get a lot of these really interesting, cutesy, bubbly kind of vehicles. You also get scooters with like kid carriers and stuff, which is strange to see on what's effectively a motorcycle. It's the kind of like seat you would expect to see on a bicycle, but interesting innovations like those. At the same time, Yachty is really expand into just so many non-bike and non-scooter vehicles. They had electric dirt bikes, things that we would often call like Sur Ron or Talaria class vehicles. They had fully fledged motorcycles. They had police motorcycles. They had what we would call like tuk-tuks or three-wheeled truck style vehicles, three-wheeled enclosed cars, the kind of things that in China are really popular for grandparents to pick up the kids at school, that sort of thing. And they're obviously a lot more stable than a two-wheeler. You don't have to put your feet down. They're fully enclosed to protect you from the wind and the rain and that sort of thing. The company had electric bicycles and actually a pretty wide range. We've reviewed a few of their e-bikes before, as well as a few of their standing electric scooters. Those are the two vehicles that they've actually brought to the US. Actually, I just saw a comment pop up from Fargo Townie there that's asking about, so we mostly get Yachty's electric bicycles and scooters. We don't have their like larger seated scooters like the Vespas in the US yet. But we have tried some of their smaller scooters and bicycles. But being there at the show, I was able to see a lot of electric bicycle models that they have not brought to the US yet, including electric mountain bikes, electric fitness bikes, that sort of thing. So it's interesting to see their lineup expanding. I have to imagine those are going to come to the US because mountain and sort of like fitness road bikes are not a huge category in China. Surely they sell, there are mountain bike parks, that sort of thing, but it's just not as big of a market as it is in the US and Europe. So I imagine they're building those for export, and we're going to see those as well. They also had new standing electric scooters that I have not seen before that they'll probably be exporting as well because it's just a very European and North American product. Standing scooters are not very popular in China. So just really interesting to see all sorts of different vehicles, but perhaps even more amazing, just how huge this place was and how many dealers came to this. I mean, literally over 4,000 dealers were represented. I talked to people from all over the world. Interviewed one of their dealers from Mexico, and saw people from literally just like every corner of the earth that Yadea has somehow penetrated. If anything, the U.S. is probably one of the few markets where we haven't gotten their larger scooters. I was just in Greece last week and saw Yachty scooters all over the place. So unfortunately, based on the current tariff situation, I can't imagine that we're going to get any of the larger Yachty scooters anytime soon. But I really hope that changes because they've got so much to offer, and they've brought it basically everywhere else in the world. 100 million units. That's wild.
So I'm in China now for the Shanghai Auto Show, but we were just in Zeeker's hometown of Hangzhou. You heard of Hangzhou? Hangzhou?
Uh, Hangzhou, right?
Hangzhou, yeah.
Yeah,
Zhou.
yeah. I think it's Hang. I mean, my Mandarin's not great, but I think if I remember correctly, that's how they called it when I was there. But I was there, yeah.
So I like the name sounds familiar. Don't know anything about the city. Turns out it's like 13 million people live there, and it's got amazing skyscrapers, and it's like if it was in the U.S., it would be like the number one or two city in the country, and nobody even knows about this place. So, but to get to the point is that there's almost, I would say, probably 50-50 EVs and gas cars, but there are zero gas scooters. Like every scooter there is electric, and there's some old scooters that are like 10 years old that have been converted to electric. Scooter, the person, not the device, but and I were walking around looking at some of these old things, and they have, some of them still have like spokes and remnants of a chain system, but they just have the rear hub electric motor and some bespoke stuff put up. So they've actually gotten to the point where I don't think they have gas scooters anymore. And we're talking about 13 million people. And I think it's Hangzhou is one of the fastest growing cities in China, which is saying something. There's infrastructure going up everywhere. It feels like the future. Zero gas scooters, which is like, it's incredible because you're walking around this huge city and it's just quiet, except for like all the
Yeah.
infrastructure happening.
And when you get like sort of a peloton of scooters that goes by, and it's just like the whooshing of air, you don't hear
Yeah, maybe
any
some tire sounds.
engines, any exhaust. Exactly. Yeah. It's so weird. It's like you don't have your audio channel turned on because
Right.
like 30 scooters go by and there's no sound. It's almost like disorienting until you get used to it.
It's really nice though. It's like, it's cliche at this point, I'm sure, but like being in China and like, DeepSeek is here, and a bunch, Zeekr and a bunch of other like new companies are here. So it's blowing up, but they've done such a good job with like infrastructure. There's like dedicated scooter or bike uh, trails all over, or roads all over the place. I mean, they plant flowers like all along the highway. It's just absurd. Like the whole thing. It just seems like the future. So electric scooters, huge part of the future. They have all the options. They can have bikes. They can have standing scooters. They can have gas scooters. Everybody's kind of going toward these electric scooters. It seems like the final form of micro mobility.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, government regulations that make gas scooters either more expensive or illegal certainly helps. And we could talk about how much governments should put their finger on the scale all day. But the point is, when there's a push towards electrification, the benefits are just incredible, and often in ways that we don't expect. You think about reduced pollution, that sort of thing. You don't necessarily think first about like how much nicer it just is to walk around, but that's an absolute benefit.
Yeah, and it's so easy to get around as well. Like it's fun. It's not even like a chore. It's not even stressful. It's just very easy and very pleasant. If there were any birds
Absolutely.
here, you could just hear them chirping, but I don't know that there are.
Yeah, I didn't
Just
see a
all
lot of
drones.
pigeons now that you mention it. Yeah.
Yeah, just drones. All right, let's move on. Proposed California law seeks to create new Sur Ron style e-bike category for legal status. We talked about this in the past, but
Yeah, this one's
what's
interesting because it's so this is not a law yet, right? This is a currently pending bill that's been proposed to create a class of vehicles that they're going with the name e-motos. I'm not sure this is a great name for this class. I'll touch on that in a moment, but it's beside the point. It's trying to create this class called e-motos that would be something between an electric bicycle and a fully fledged electric motorcycle that would be regulated as a street legal vehicle by the NHTSA. E-motos in this class that they're making up would not be an on-street vehicle. This would be something like an ATV class vehicle for off-highway use, the way that you can, in California, register like a dune buggy or a UTV or something like that, and you can ride it around on trails. But they do need to be legally registered. So this would apply a lot of those registration requirements to Sur Ron type vehicles. It would allow them to be legally operated on public trails and that sort of thing, but not for highway use. That would be under NHTSA or the NHTSA, and would require all of those like DOT, federal motor vehicle safety standards be applied. So this is currently sort of working its way through the California Assembly. I don't know what the odds are that this actually gets passed. If it does, the ramifications are not quite as big as if this was trying to create a on-road classification for these bikes, right? Because these would still be intended for their original purpose, which is really, fire roads, trails, jump parks, that kind of thing. When Sur Rons were first, became popular, it was like 2017, 18 or so. I mean, that's what those things were designed for. They were never meant to be on-road vehicles. They were meant as like, fun, light jumping, sort of mini electric dirt bikes. And because they're so potent as a small, powerful vehicle, they really got co-opted as this sort of new illegal on-road motorcycle. But this would seek to return them to this off-road classification and do it under a legal framework. I don't know how popular this will be or whether it will spread around the US. I kind of think not so much, just because every state has different ways that they classify these types of off-road vehicles. But it is interesting to see California attempt to make some progress on this issue, because if there's any state where Sur Rons are becoming a problem on streets, it's probably California, where you just see, significant use from teenagers and sort of like roving Sur Ron gangs, which itself is kind of a divisive issue. I mean, personally, I think these are great vehicles, but yeah, it is a problem to have a bunch of, teenagers doing 45 miles an hour down the road on what is meant to be an off-road motorcycle. The last thing here that I think is a real swing and a miss is that they're trying to name this category e-motos, which is a terrible name because it sort of colloquially includes so many things. Like a zero motorcycle, people call it an e-moto, like an electric motorcycle. So I think this was a terrible idea for a name for this, and I hope this does not get written into law, because it's going to create a regulatory term that only applies in California and is super confusing. There's already enough confusion around the term moped that I don't think we need another one of these to try and struggle to argue about. But it is an interesting legislative attempt, and one that we'll definitely want to watch to see if this has implications for the larger U.S. market. I don't know about you, Seth, but I don't see a lot of mileage on this for this spreading around too much, creating this sort of off-road legal class.
Yeah, I don't know what the point is really. I mean, like they're going to create it, but they still have to enforce it, and I think enforcing is already. I mean, I think these are already illegal, so I don't know why creating a separate class would be enforcing it. So it is kind of confusing to me. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to find a solution, but for the wrong problem.
Right. Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. And we have one last story. InMotion launches a new 28 mile per hour electric unicycle with air suspension.
Yeah, the so we'll get to the article, but the comments were a little brutal on this thing. It was a lot of like Darwin Award type comments. I think people don't realize that you don't have to go 28 miles an hour just because the unicycle can go 28 miles per hour. But this is the newest InMotion electric unicycle. It is the V9, and the funny thing is there are a lot of people reacting to this like it's some crazy suicide machine, but it's actually one of the tamer of the InMotion electric unicycles. They've got a lot of models that go 30, 40, 50 miles an hour and have insanely powerful motors. This one's got a 1,000-watt motor, which is powerful, but it's not ridiculous, and it goes up to 28, which is as fast as any or the fastest class 3 electric bicycles. And it's really designed to be sort of that Goldilocks electric unicycle between the sort of meek and mild learner wheels and those crazy off-road ones. I think the price is something like $12.99, which is fairly reasonable for a pretty fast and powerful ride like this. Now, these are a little more complicated in the software side than an e-bike, because they are self-balancing, but there's significantly less hardware. And like Seth, you touched on earlier with shipping of the cargo bikes, ideally you've got a lot lower shipping costs here because it's basically the size of like a 20-inch bike wheel. For those not watching and just listening to the podcast, electric unicycles, they don't look like the sort of like juggling clown unicycle that you think of with a banana seat. These are more like a briefcase with a wheel inside of it that you straddle with foot platforms on either side. And these are actually really popular in their dedicated niche community, right? Like this isn't some like crazy weird vehicle. These are common enough that there are communities in tons of cities around the U.S. And around the world even that people ride these things, and they really like them for a lot of reasons, which I can understand. I'm not a huge electric unicycle guy myself, but I do enjoy riding them from time to time. But the people who swear by these really like how portable they are. It's the size of a bicycle wheel. So instead of needing to, carry or move or store an entire bicycle, imagine just needing something the size of one wheel. And they're also surprisingly comfortable to ride once you get the hang of it. With this one, it's even got air suspension, so you don't have the shocks and bumps. There are a lot of $1,200 e-bikes that don't have suspension, or if they do, it's like cheap spring suspension. So, both hardware and software, these things are starting to look nicer and nicer. Now, the downside is they do take a little while to learn. I actually started on the InMotion V8 when I started learning to ride these things, which has been around for many years. I think that was like 2018 when I rode it. And it took me a few sessions until I could even like sort of go straight, or at least decide the direction I wanted to go in and not just fall forwards like I'm, falling off of a Segway. But once you get it and your brain clicks, it's a really interesting and fairly fun way to get around. So I get it. I think this is an interesting addition to InMotion's lineup because it really does fit nicely between the expensive crazy wheels and the sort of meek and mild ones that are good for learning but just don't have much power and can't really climb hills, that sort of thing. So I see it as a great addition. Seth, have you ever tried one of these electric unicycles?
Yeah, a friend of mine in Paris has one of these, and I did try it. I got up on it. Didn't feel super safe on it, but was able to kind of get around. It is strangely capable. Like it does. It seems like you would fall one way, like in any three directions, four directions. But once they're going, you kind of have that centripetal force, and you kind of have, I don't know. I don't know what it is that keeps you kind of on there, but like when you see these people on there, you're like, how the heck do they stay on those things? But there is some sort of weird stability that happens when the thing's going, and you lean forward a little bit and you go a little faster, and it all kind of just makes sense. So, are they safe? Probably not terribly, but they're definitely doable, and it's certainly a form of transportation, especially in the cities that nothing beats them from a portability standpoint.
Yeah, lots of times I'll get comments from people in the electric unicycle community asking me like, why don't you cover EUCs more? And like I get it. There are a smaller group of people that ride them, but they're very dedicated, and I can see why they like them.
Yeah, I mean it's a great portable means of transportation. All right, that's all for stories. Let's go into the comments. Seth, use a VPN. Well, I tried. I'm bored. I was all ready to use it. Everybody was telling me like that's how you get all the good old American internet, and it turns out China's figured it out. So I tried using NordVPN and getting through to Taiwan or Hong Kong or Japan or the US, and they were all locked up. So here we are.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe I'll get a Starlink next time or something.
So
Extra Hero
actually, I
says,
have one other tip for that.
yeah.
If you have a hotspot, that also helps me as well, because the hotspot will often have its own VPN. So sometimes when I couldn't
Oh,
get Nord to connect, I could use my hotspot's VPN.
yeah. I have, this is getting kind of techie geeky, but I have a Synology at home which has a VPN feature, which I could just, I'm sure they're not looking at my particular VPN at my house. I just don't have it set up right now, and I should have obviously done that before I left. The other thing is, on my phone using my T-Mobile roaming, I do have access to Facebook or whatever, but it's just such a slow connection that it's almost not worth even connecting. But I do have access. So, Extra Hero wants to know, Micah, how many frequent flyer miles do you have? No more space in that passport. Yes, you've done quite a bit of traveling.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, it's all on different airlines, and I'm not racking up a ton of like Air China miles, but yeah, a lot of stamps.
Yeah, a lot of the people here at the Shanghai event were saying that it's so much better to fly a Chinese airline to Europe because they can fly over Russia, whereas all the Western airlines have to fly around Russia. So it adds like 2 or 3 hours to the trip. It's a little
Interesting.
life hack, I guess. All right. Fargo says, does Yadea have plans to bring mopeds or electric motorcycles to the U.S. market? Talk about that.
I'm guessing not in the near future, both because of the tariff, which just makes the situation worse, but it only exacerbates the lack of a desire that I see in the U.S. market for that type of vehicle. There are people who ride scooters and electric motorcycles, but in general, it's just a pretty small market in North America. So I can't see them jumping to get into that the way they are in Latin America and Europe and Oceania.
Yeah, I don't know. I like those pastel colors. Maybe we'll see some of those soon. All right, Extra Hero says those cutesy scooters look like they would work so well in a Disney theme park. There's an idea. Also love the pastel colors. They remind me of last year when Electrek gave us the pink and light blue Expedition 1.0. Yeah. All right. How do you two feel about riding in the rain, and do you get opportunities to ride in the snow? I can say that here in Hangzhou, if I'm pronouncing that right, there are quite a few. I mean, it rains here quite a bit. There are quite a few like scooters that have like the outfit attached to the scooter, so you just get on and throw a flap over your body and cover your head. So it kind of makes it a little bit more waterproof. Um, how do you feel about in the rain?
Yeah, I've wondered why those I think they call them scooter skirts if I'm not mistaken, why
Yeah,
those aren't more common. And in fact, the ones in China, it's like a whole like blanket. It's like a comforter built into
yeah,
the scooter. I don't know why those are not more common outside of China or outside of Asia. But yeah, for me, I mean, I ride in the rain, a decent amount of time. Now I live in Tel Aviv most of the year, and so our rainy season is only like 4 months out of the year. So most of like spring through summer and fall, I just don't have to worry about rain. But it doesn't stop me. And the kind of people who are like, well, what do you do in the rain? It's like we're waterproof. Like we're humans. You dry out. I
yeah.
fortunately have not had to ride in the snow in a while. I did live in Boston for 1 year while my wife was finishing grad school, and we rode through. We did 12 months there and rode all year round. We got around on a Gen Z scooter, which was awesome. Rest in peace, Gen Z company. But yeah, we rode that thing in like conditions we absolutely should not have because it was not safe at all. But we did it through snow and ice, and if you bundle up, I think if you look at uh, Dutch people or Europeans, and you can ride in basically any weather.
Yeah, and as people know, I ride almost every day in Vermont when I'm up there during the winter with my hay bike, Ronan Tyson, and that's been fantastic for 2 years now. Even in the cold, the battery's been great, so definitely doable. Extra Hero says Seth is over seasons with a guy named Scooter, presumably Scooter Braun, Justin Bieber, and Area Guns manager. So good luck on your pop music career. You may have the facts a little bit wrong on that one, but
Different scooter.
Scooter. Hang Joe, yep, working on that one. Which city bike with 100 miles range is the best? yeah, I think probably the one we talked about was pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean that's my personal like normal daily driver e-bike, the Priority Current Plus. And I mean that guy that kept it in level one got 92 miles or so. So it's about as close to 100 as you can expect to get. And that's a great bike for about a little over $3,000.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Gandalf, I'm seeing more and more unlicensed moped-like e-bikes in New York City that don't have the pedals just for show. The designs could easily have pedals but don't. Do you find this brazen? It sounds like the authorities may not be cracking down on pedal things, or they don't care about the pedal things. From what you say, I'm not familiar with what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see that everywhere, I think. The beauty of micromobility is that there's such capable vehicles, right? But that's why we also need, real laws that protect riders, protect people, and make sure that this is done safely. So I think we're going to continue to see people flouting these laws. But yeah,
All right, Emotos is indeed an awful name. Looking at the bike, I interpret that as an electric motocross, but without the picture, it's up for interpretation. Yeah, we don't need to mess up the names any more than they already are.
right.
All right, have either of you ever witnessed a group ride where there are people riding bikes, scooters, and those weird unicycles? I like them because of the safety and numbers aspect. I have seen group rides. What is that called in San Francisco? Critical mass.
Critical mass. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen a bunch of those kind of events all over the place.
Yeah, it's always fun when you can get a bunch of people together like that. I was actually in the most amazing group ride I've ever been in was in Amsterdam for Micromobility Europe. I think it was 2 years ago. They had they called it the rave ride. There was a DJ who was very popular in Amsterdam, and he has his whole DJ rig set up on a cargo bike, and so he rides while DJing. I don't know what the verb is. And like literally, there was a rolling rave that like we were just rolling through the streets of Amsterdam, and it was designed for the people at this conference, but because it was like out in the public, everyone was invited, and because there's so many people on bikes, just as we went, we just like people joined, and it grew from like 100 people to hundreds of people, and like you couldn't
Wow,
even see the edges. It was just literally a rolling rave.
that's amazing. Do you
Yeah.
remember we were in Germany, Munich, and we were riding home from EAA one time, and then all of a sudden there were just bikes everywhere, and we were in like one of those critical masses. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, I remember the trip, but there were so many crazy bike
Right.
escapades that went on that one.
Yeah, we were coming
Oh
back
man.
from a day at IAA, and we just like rolled right into a critical mass somehow. It was pretty interesting. All right, extra hero. People don't talk enough about how an electric bike changes the lives of low income people. It changed my life and gave me freedom to go beyond my circumstances. That sounds amazing. I agree 100%. Like an electric bike or a bike or whatever, any kind of mobility can totally change your life. I remember, even as a kid, like just getting a bike, like just opened up my world. I could go to the mall. I could go, I could get a job somewhere a little further out. Like there's a lot of options that micro mobility opens up in people's lives.
Yeah, and I think Extra Hero used like the exact correct term. Like these are life changing. It's about giving people transportation independence. That unfortunately we've built our societies around cars, right? Like that's just what's happened. And so if you don't have a car, you're kind of left out of the conversation. But to obtain near car capabilities, to get that transportation independence with something that costs, $1,000 instead of $30,000 is an incredible opportunity, and it really is life changing for so many people.
All right, Alex Gerard says, "How did you both get your start in the PEV space?" Trying to remember the first electric bike I got.
Was it the Saunders?
It might have been the $500. Well, I didn't get the 500. I tried to get the $500 Saunders, and I ended up getting a Saunders X, which was like the next one. And I still have that bike. But I think in the meantime, like of course, Saunders took forever delivers by like months. So
Yeah, sounds about
I
right.
got yeah. So I think I got another bike. I remember another early bike was the Rally Redux IE. I got in 2016 or something. That was a great bike. I rode that for I don't know 3 or 4 years, like every day.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think you probably got on a little bit earlier, Micah. You had some bespoke e-bikes that you guys put together in like grad school or something, right?
Yeah, so I'll try to do the short version, but yeah, it was like 2009 or 2010. I got into e-bikes with a couple of my classmates in engineering school, and we actually started a electric bicycle company. It's called Pulse Motors. This was 2010 or so, and we were developing mid-drive e-bikes like back before mid-drive was a thing. Like we would have been the first ones to market with that. And it was going pretty well for a couple of years, but for a few reasons that I learned a lot about entrepreneurism from, it didn't work out. And so, but it got me my start in the industry, and from there, I've gotten to here.
Cool. All right. Extra hero, Micah. I didn't know your wife also indulges in electric mobility. I thought she just left that all to you and just considered it one of your quirks.
Oh, I've infected her with the bug of electric mobility, I should say. Yeah, she rides an e-bike to work every day. I'm very proud of her. I don't even ride every day because my commute is like 20 feet.
Yeah.
I try to ride every day, but she does every day to go to work.
I feel like she's cameoed in a couple of your videos.
Oh,
As
definitely,
so
definitely.
got her on the payroll. All right. Mike Sprizella says, in my 50s and living on a steep hill, e-bikes made the difference between riding and not. It's a great point. I think that's true for a lot of people. In fact, for me, probably getting to the coffee shop is over a big mountain. So riding e-bikes is the difference between going and not going. All right, extra hero. I'm crying thinking about how my electric bike allowed me to work and live far away from my old neighborhood. And because of that, I'm not dead or in jail like most of my peers. That's kind of inspiring.
Absolutely. Yeah. Respect.
Yep. All right.
All right, so I think that's all the comments for this week. Thank you guys all for joining in with us. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back in another 2 weeks for another episode of the Wheelie Podcast. See you next time, everyone.